Well, I had to sit down tonight, but the person didn't show up. So, wow, it was still a great night. Even though the interview didn't go through, it's just a self reflection of people are dealing with their own shit. And this person is so cool to me. Just the father, the person, the dedication he has to being who he is. It's in my first interview. His name's Mark. I have the privilege to have the right to speak about him. Um, what an excellent father. What an excellent rocker, punk rocker, whatever, thrash metal. Everything he's played in to Kiss is just wow. And it always centers me when I speak to him because I feel like my life ain't shit to what he's going through. Um, yeah, I'm not mad. I'm not disappointed that the person didn't show up. That person that was supposed to show up. Um, also, what a just a cool, decent individual. Um, I don't know, but whatever's happening in my life ain't shit. Ain't shit. Ain't shit. I got nothing to complain. I shouldn't be complaining. Just especially hearing him go through a phone call that he did right now in front of me. When you have something in your mind, especially something important, you can't enjoy the time that you have planned out or whatever you had to deal with that day. It's just experiencing it with my son, having to be stuck in the hospital and you having to find out how he's doing. It's just what this this person, this guitarist, this artist, it just blows you away and it just centers you so much to the point where you're like, shit, I ain't got nothing to complain about. My life ain't shit. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, that our perception about life, which is everybody has the right to have their own perception about life, but sometimes we do have to come to an understanding where reality lays. Reality's a bitch. It's a whole other organism. It's a whole other organism, especially when you're just feeling depressed or down about how your situation's going. But other than using your phones to ask GPT or ask or look up for videos on how other people are doing, sometimes you can find a little bit of solace knowing that others are doing. It's kind of fucked up when you're like, well, okay, this person's doing worse than me. Let me find solace in that. That's kind of like a two-edged sword where it's kind of a little bit of selfish or like, what a dick, man. He's finding solace in somebody else's pain. That's not my point. It's just my point is that sometimes you can feel a little bit good about yourself, as you find out that the kids in Africa are not fucking eating because your ass is eating a steak over here. But that's not my point. My point is that this individual, just the situation he's been in, and since I known him, I known him before, I know him just when he's at a point of life. Some of these people, they're acquaintances or they're friends. This person has been far in between that I've known him. I've known him in his youth, I've known him in his young adult, and I know him now to the point that it's not fucked up to think, all right, this guy's going through a fucking worse situation than I am. But my admiration for him is just the man that he is, which is I'm not even fucking close to it. I've bitched about shit that I shouldn't even be bitching about. And if you ever find out my wife leaves me, like we were having that conversation with him tonight about, our spouses. I kind of told him my story about what the shit that my spouse has been through, and my spouse has been through. Like, I'll never feel what he's gone through, a worse situation with his son than what I've gone with my first son. My first son, I don't have a right to speak about him, but it's just the situation medical wise was rough. But what he's going through is just a whole other different level. And he brings me solace, and he brings me, to a point where we have to find solace in this fucking storm that we go through in life, with our children, with our life, with just anything. So he he's just a person that, wow, deserves my admiration. I'm home now. um, I cut the video off because I was picking my son up from work. But back to the night I've had. You know, as I was saying before I cut the video off, um, man, sometimes it, it might suck, to think, man, that motherfucker's doing worse than I am. But, you know, sometimes there's some people that you can hold on to, or you can find appreciation. God damn it, it's so hard to say. I'm not a poet. I'm not a writer. Just a fucked up artist. Trying to put in words is very difficult for me. Just, just, um, just realizing, that there are people out there that are doing worse than you. And again, like I said, it sucks to have to find solace in that. But I don't know. Since I was supposed to do an interview tonight, and one of the persons didn't show up, and I have mad, super mad respect for that person. I don't care that he didn't show up. I'm cool with it. I'm not mad at it. I'm not disappointed. We all have things that we have to deal with or issues that we have to go through. Sometimes plans don't come out. I don't know if you've been a kid that didn't have good summers, or like Danzig with that song Dirty Black Summers. We all have had dirty black summers. I don't care fuck who you are. I've spoken to some of the richest kids in fucking Chicago. Spoken to some of the richest kids in California. I've spoken to some of the rich kids that live in the fucking in Chicago and New York that live in the top of the buildings where these kids spend their whole day and they've grown up playing around on the bottom of these buildings, which some of these buildings are some of these buildings. See, some of the malls you go up in Chicago or California or whatever, right? It's the same thing. California, New York, Chicago. Some of these buildings that you go up to, like the malls and shit, they have penthouses up there where these kids live. And the whole day they spend their day playing downstairs, which is the mall area. Some of these kids were at the time that I experienced this, I was a kid too. I was about 16. Well, the first time I went to Chicago, I was about 15, 16. 15, 16. Some of these kids play in that area, and they're super rich. And then there's a part of Chicago you can't talk about, where it's just the real rich kids live at. So their definition about life is very different. Very Trump-like. You know, if you haven't seen these people and you haven't experienced their tribe, you'll understand that. You'll understand Trump the way he is. You know, I mean, you got to give of all the bad shit Trump is, you got to give him um cuz $1 million ain't shit. I don't know how much he inherited, but that shit goes, especially the life Trump likes to live, you know. Like I said in one of my past videos, I've gone through fucking money quick, which was a good experience because it turned me into a thrifty motherfucker. You know, sometimes you gotta let people trip. You know, sometimes they gotta trip. Sometimes they need to fall. You know, to understand. You know, reality. Because if you ever been hungry, I'm not talking about your mother not making you dinner. I'm not talking about a father not providing for you. I'm talking about real hunger. I used to run away from home at a very young age. And when you need to understand on how to take care of yourself, you know, hunger is a big part of it, especially when you're starving. After a couple of days, you know, back then you don't realize, but you're just all this damage that you're doing to your mind, all this damage you're doing, wasting time on just mm, on stupid reactions. That's all I gotta say. I think it's reactions, the way you react to things. It's what makes you smarter. Um, that's why I always say you gotta take care of your brain first. Then don't let your vices turn into addictions, which with which where I end up back into the beginning of the conversation or the what self interview, self interview. I guess I don't know, but Sometimes you do need to step back and look at yourself in the mirror. As somebody pointed out. Yeah, you need to look back at yourself in the mirror and but really look at yourself in the mirror and judge yourself. What are you failing? What are you going through? So this person that was supposed to interview tonight, he has an awesome story. The most beautiful story that I've heard about him is his mom taking him to go see Kiss. And so then he repaid that back by taking his mom to go see Kiss. Ain't that beautiful? I had a horrible relationship with my mom where my mom was my grandmother. And my mom never felt like a mom to me. But this guy I was supposed to interview tonight, which is, he's a drummer. And what a beautiful story. Just a cool individual that has stuck to his what? I, I guess he found himself. It's an individual that there's a girl on here called Ash Martinez. What a beautiful life. She's a beautiful mother. She's a beautiful person, and this that drummer reminds me of her. And this guitarist Mark. This is these individuals. They're stabilized in their genre and who they are. Myself is very different. Myself comes from a forced life, a forced life where I had to be somebody I didn't want to be, or I just, you know, I had to be a person I didn't want to be. I don't regret anything. I love my children. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love the other kids that I haven't met. My apologies to you, wherever you might be. It's just you would have been there and heard this conversation. This father just calling the facility where his son's at, you know. Wow. Wow. Just imagine you having to call to see if your seed is doing good, at a late night time, you know, because the whole day you've been calling. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I feel horrible because I find solace in it. I feel terrible. I feel gross. I feel disgusted to be a fucking human being and has to find solace in somebody else's suffering. But my dark side always takes over of me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I think I have it all figured out, and then something comes and smacks me in the fucking face and brings me back to reality where where, if you second question this shit and why, my friend's going through this, or why I've gone through the shit I've gone through, or why even Mike Tyson, like he says, Mike Tyson says he's been fucking treated. If you can imagine anything that can be fucking brought upon a man. And I reflect with him. I reflect with Mike Tyson, even though sometimes he comes off as a fucking joke, but his child life wasn't cool. He suffered through his child life. You know, the worst story about him is when he has to hide between the walls while his mom's prostituting herself. I didn't go through that shit. I mean, I went through a bad fucking neighborhood. I don't care. I don't give a fuck who says different. I experienced it. I went through it. You know, some of these people, even though they were in the same neighborhood, they lived in a part of the street where they were left alone. On my streets, they didn't. So I had to experience some of this shit that made me a dark person, a very dark person. And if it wasn't for some of my family members, I don't know where I would be. You know, but after coming back from this individual's house and just seeing him, not in the moment, and then hearing him, because we had a couple of beers, we had some shots and everything, but, it's just from past experience with my son, you just kind of have a good time, you know. I hope I listen to him speak. I hope I didn't, interrupt or overstay my welcome. But it was a cool experience, you know. I don't believe in I don't believe in too many things, you know. Always, I don't know. My favorite show is X Files, because there's literally X Files where they just can't figure shit out. Like that movie Smiley Man or something like that. I don't know. But back to the point is that a feather fell down. We're already in darkness. It's already nighttime. A feather fell down right in front of him. And he's like, "What do you think that means?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "A feather just fell right down in front of me." And so I'm like, you know what? My wife does this. She always chat CTPT, whatever the fuck it's called, but she goes and fucking checks shit out. And I did it one time hanging with my cousin, and it gave me a weird response. So tonight I was like, let me check it out. And so I asked the computer, what does this mean? And the meanings it gave me, multiple meanings, was that there was an angel present. There was an angel present right now. And that's what that feather meant. So all these different explanations led to the same thing. And some I've had conversations with people where I've set them straight to the point where they said, you're an angel. But tonight he was the angel to me. Coming off of a very dark situation where the situation I'm coming off from is that sometimes everybody's against you. You know, and that situation sucks because some of these people that are against you, they don't mean you no harm. They just are trying to look out for you, you know? And it's so hard to understand when people mean well to you, especially the life I've led, you know. So, as I said, in the part where I was waiting for my son to pick him up, if any of you out there ever see me get a divorce from my wife, or my wife leaves me, there's some women that say you can't afford me, but that's monetization, that's money, but especially the person that I grew up as and just the way I am, I don't blame my wife if she ever leaves me, or y'all find out that my wife left me, or that we got a divorce. Shut up. My wife has every right to leave me. I've been a horrible person. I've been a very good father. I will give myself credit for that, which I'm a person that doesn't give myself credit for shit. I blame myself for everything. Every action, every reaction, every cause, every fucking thing that has come from any action with me and my wife or any other woman that has fucking had, a relationship with me. There's no question to it. I've been a very, very, very heavy person. I don't like to talk bad about my family. I love my family. They're very educated people, but there's some parts of their DNA that just made me a very horrible person. Not a bad person, but a horrible person. I've always tried to maneuver myself in a way that would be productive to my family. And experiencing that, I guess it has turned me into a semi-decent person. I don't know. It's just I grew up and I manipulate my situation to help me. I've never screwed people over. I don't know how this got out of context. But, in business, this is just what you do. You manipulate people to come into your business. You advertise it for them to come into your business. But the way I would do it was I would educate somebody and give them ideas on how to fix their business or how to do something for themselves. But, am I manipulating the situation into working out for you? I guess, I've come to the understanding that I guess it was bad. But I don't know, I would wait for a kickback. No bad intention in any way. I just don't understand how I got translated into that, which has never been my intention. Never. I don't know. Yeah, there has to be. There's always a beginning and end. You gotta fight. You gotta fight your mind. So that was my night tonight. You know, experiencing somebody else's pain and bring myself into a fucking selfish, self-centered wise, and having, it sucks having to tell that person, that's the worstest part, is that when you're a fucking honest person like I am, or as dark as I am, it sucks to tell that person, that individual, wow, man, you fucking bring me solid, you center me, and you still have to leave that person in the same situation he's in. So, yeah. So have you ever dealt with people with fucking mental issues, or, that are, you meet people that are in situations where you might have the idea to get them the fuck out of it. You might have the words to get them the fuck out of it, but that's your fucking opinion. Those are your words. There's no fucking way you can tell somebody that's suffering mentally, stop. Stop. I know an easy way, but that's not the answer. And not, I would have taken it, I would have done it myself, you know? I don't know. Just keep fighting. I'm not picking on the people that are disabled. I'm not picking on anybody. I don't give a fuck what you are. I'm a Star Trek mentality motherfucker before X-Men, before any comic book, before any fucking movie, before, you know, Nietzsche. The anarchist. Before any of these fucking rappers started coming out with this shit, they kept fucking using that word. Oh my god, I got tired of them fucking using that word. Machiavelli. Disappearance. You never want to get that point where you want to disappear from your own life. And my admiration for this person that I got to spend the night with tonight and converse with that man, it was just beautiful. The night wasn't ruined at all. And let me give that man a name. Mark, aka Scooter. Awesome guitar player. Say a prayer for him tonight. Say a prayer for his family if that's what you believe in. And you call out to God, remember, He has a name, Jehovah. Y'all keep cool. And have a good night. Bye.